Hey there, FPV pilots and everybody else as well. It's Smooth Virus, call sign Virus. So this morning I saw a tweet about this story. It's on the drive.com, which has a lot of news articles about aviation and also military war coverage, a lot of stuff from the Middle East. Um, and I've read some articles by this writer before, by Tyler Rogoway. So anyway, this story is bouncing all around on Twitter, and now it's crossed over to Facebook, and it's people are talking about it on all the FPV hobbyist groups. So the title here is "Help Us Decipher This Terrifying Video of a Suicide Drone Flying Up an Armored Vehicle's Ramp." The dramatic video may serve as yet another warning of America's glaring short-range air defense gap and the threat that low-end enemy drones pose. February 10th, 2020. So it was actually posted yesterday, this being February the 11th. So here's a screenshot from the video, and we see some basic range and altitude information, see a couple of armored vehicles, some kind of APC, see people running away. A frightening video has emerged showing what appears to be a suicide drone attack on a wheeled armored vehicle that is surrounded by personnel. And I don't really need to go into the article, but it showed up on a Russian Twitter account, a Russian language Twitter account. Let's go to the video itself and take a look at what they're talking about. Okay, so we see what looks like a installation of some type in the desert. We see some personnel, and there's the vehicles. And it flies right up the ramp and crashes. Okay, so since this clip is really short, let's load it up in a video player and take a closer look. So I want you to notice a few things here. First of all, the propeller. I recognize that propeller instantly because that is a aeronaut folding propeller. How do I know this? I use them on my quote-unquote drones. Here's some footage of one of my planes flying just a few days ago, and you can see it's the same kind of propeller. So these folding propellers are quite popular with hobbyists, and you can order them online, have them delivered pretty much anywhere. I probably have a dozen of them down in my workshop right now, and maybe more than that. So not only are the Aeronaut Cam Carbon propellers popular with hobbyists, they are also used by defense contractors to build small drones used by the military. In fact, if you go to the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., up on the upper level, there's a drone hanging next to the walkway, and it's got an Aeronaut Cam Carbon folder right there on display. But let's go back to the video now. Now that we know that that's a Aeronaut Cam Carbon on whatever drone this is. Okay, so we're back at the video. Now, I want you to pay attention to these telemetry numbers that are up here at the top. So we've got range, ALT, which has got to be altitude, and NE, it's compass heading. So, and then the rest of it's blanked out, probably for security reasons. But I want you to watch this number right here, the range 159. Notice that as the drone approaches the vehicles, that number goes down. Now, typically, let's back this up a little bit. Typically, that should be the range that the drone is from the operator. So, this drone is actually flying towards the individual that's operating it. So, would you call in a drone strike on yourself? I don't think so. Also, notice the altitude over here on the right. That's definitely in feet. It's not in meters, it's in feet. So if this was a Russian-made drone, it wouldn't be using feet as an altitude measurement. It would be using meters. That's 126 feet. It's not 126 meters. Also, note this as well. When we get to the end, the very end of the video, we actually get some garbled data back. So I'm assuming at this point the drone's in pieces, but it's still transmitting video to whoever recorded this. So that tells me that there's not a bomb on board. It didn't explode because it's still got power. It's still transmitting. I mean, the wings are probably busted off of it, but it's still transmitting. All right, so let's look at these telemetry numbers that are on the screen here. Now, in the FPV hobby, we usually call this an on-screen display, or OSD. And there's a bunch of different models of OSD available to hobbyists. I've played around with most of them. I do not recognize this OSD. I'm certain that it is not a hobbyist OSD. But I have figured out who did make it, and it's not available for hobbyist use. So let's go to another video from YouTube, and I'll show you an identical OSD to what you see here, the same font, the same kind of format, everything is identical. So here we have a promotional video from the Lockheed Martin company for their Desert Hawk 3 unmanned aerial vehicle. And the Desert Hawk 3 is sold to various Western militaries. I know the British use it, and I believe it's in use by the United States military as well. And here we see the soldier hand launching the Desert Hawk, which is pretty much exactly the same way that hobbyists launch their planes. And, well, what do we have here? This is footage from the Desert Hawk, uncensored. And look up there at the upper left and the upper right. Range and altitude, ALT, and the compass heading slightly lower into the center there. It is the identical layout, 100% identical to what we see in the so-called suicide drone video. And here we see a soldier holding a Lockheed Martin Desert Hawk, and you can see the aeronaut cam carbon folding propeller right there on the front of the vehicle, just like the propeller we can see in the footage from the suicide drone. So what we're seeing here is not an attack on Western military forces by a suicide drone. It's a botched recovery of an American-made drone built by Lockheed Martin. And somebody said something like, "Hey, Corporal, what's his face? I bet you can't fly that thing into the MRAP." And he's like, "Oh yeah? Watch this." I'm going to call this one deciphered, or debunked, if you will. And it's not a suicide drone. It's a Lockheed Martin Desert Hawk 3, and it's a botched recovery of that Desert Hawk 3. The part that troubles me is that sensational headlines like this and sensationalized stories like this in the press are the reason that the United States government is preparing to completely ban the RC flying hobby, not just the FPV part of it, but all of it, through the notice of proposed rulemaking from the FAA, which is going to be closed to comments here in about 3 weeks, 2 weeks. So, yeah, that's the part that's terrifying to me. Not this video, but the fact that our freedoms are being taken away because of sensational press coverage frightening the public. Anyway, I'm not going to keep everybody any longer, and thanks for watching. You guys have a super fine one, and if you want to see more cool FPV videos before I get shut down by the FBI, click on the subscribe button. Have a great evening, and we'll see you later. Smooth Virus out.